G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ewan, aka the Draft Monster. Today we're talking about some more AFL fantasy for the 2024 season, and in particular we're talking about the guys you probably shouldn't be drafting come round 1 or possibly at all for the season to come. So let's check it out. So I've decided to break this video into two different segments today, one being the facts, and those are the players that factually they are 100% not going to be available come round 1 and possibly not for a majority of the season as well. Secondly, I'll be going through the much more intricate aspect of AFL fantasy, and that is my feelings for the upcoming season and which players I feel, but they're not 100% certain to do poorly this year. But I have a feeling there's going to be a few guys digressing, as there always are. So starting off with some facts for you all, some 100% truths here coming into the season is that there will be some players that are just not going to be right for round 1, and those are usually your long-term injuries, your suspensions coming into the season, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be missing some real guns to start off the year. So I've compiled a little list here of names. I've got a few on the board here, and some are pretty big. So starting off with Bailey Smith. He is gone for the whole year next year. Bailey Smith from the Bulldogs had midfield and forward status. He could have been one of the top 3 forwards for the upcoming season, but he has succumbed to an ACL injury, and yeah, he's not going to be playing at all for the upcoming season, and that is a tragedy for men and women alike. Second big name off the bat here is Callum Mills, the captain, or used to be captain of the Sydney Swans. Suffered a pretty awful shoulder injury during the Mad Monday celebrations come the end of last season, and yeah, the time frame on his shoulder is not the greatest. We might not be seeing him till quarter to halfway through the season this year as he recovers from that awful shoulder injury. And yeah, maybe once he's back he will be relevant, but to start off the season I don't see him getting drafted at all early, and yeah, you're going to have some balls on you to pick him up in the first 5 rounds of your drafts, I'd say. Even though if he was fit, I'd say he would be going in the first 2 rounds easily, but he's not. He's got a bung shoulder, and yeah, let's see how he recuperates over the next few months. Yeah, wait and see on Callum Mills. So next up I have young lion Will Ashcroft, who unfortunately succumbed to that ACL injury in July last year. Good news was it was not too far towards the end of last season, so we might be able to see him back come halfway through this season. Yeah, really touch and go with Will. He is running again, which is a good sign, but those ACL injuries are doozies, and yeah, at this point in the season, they are the ones to look out for. And yeah, he 100% will not be in the Lions starting 22 or 23 come the start of 2024. On to a Hawk now in Chad Wingard, and Mr. Wingard unfortunately succumbed to a Achilles injury towards the end of last year. Traditionally, Achilles injuries, depending on severity, could be between 6 to 9 months he could be taking to get back onto the field for next year. I think he was still in a moon boot not too long ago, so it's going to still be a little while before we see Chad back on the field for the Hawks. He wasn't doing exceptionally well last season anyway, but he is a forward again, and as we know, forwards, we're all looking for the forwards, the gold in the forward line this year, and he could have been one of them, maybe, but unfortunately he's not going to be there for the first few months of the 2024 season, and you can scratch him off the books in your draft leagues. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole come round 1 or even round 5 to 10. Next up, I have the young Eagle who's taken in the mid-season draft a year or two ago in Jai Cully. Another one who, at this point, we're looking at ACLs galore right now, because Jai Cully did succumb to that ACL injury midway or early on last year. Possibly we could be seeing him back in the first quarter, maybe the first half of this year. It'll be interesting to see how he's travelling come the early parts of the season, and when he's going to break into that 22 again, even when he is fit. So a lot of interesting stuff going on at the Eagles, and unfortunately, Jai Cully, possibly a new superstar of the game, he's going to be out for the first few times of the season. Moving down the list now, and I have Jake Melksham there. He did also succumb to an ACL injury come the end of last year, and there's going to be not much hope for him getting on the park for majority of the season this year. As I said previously, ACL injuries take a long time to recover from, and even when you're running again, you got to get that conditioning, you got to get back to AFL standards. Considering how late his injury was last year, there's really going to be touch and go to even see him at all during this season. And yeah, keep an eye on him maybe later on in the year, but just remember on draft day, he's not going to be doing anything for your team early on this season. Now, the same could be said, unfortunately, for Dan McStay, who was a pivotal forward for the Collingwood Magpies last year. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make it to the grand final, and suffered that season-ending ACL injury very late in 2023. And we're not going to see him on the park at all this year. I reckon he's just, it was so late in the season last year, and again, ACL injuries going to take forever to come back from that. So we will be very lucky to see Daniel McStay on the park at all in 2024. So keep him well off your draft boards come round 1. And finally, a quick note just on Elijah Hollins. Not really a do not draft, but just to be wary that he is going to miss the first couple of rounds of the season due to his possession of illicit drugs towards the end of last season, just before he got traded from the Gold Coast Suns. So he will 100% be missing round 1 or whenever he's meant to be playing in 2024. Alright, moving on now to my feelings for the upcoming season. These are not 100% truths, but I've done some research and I've been around a little bit now in the AFL fantasy world, and I've got some feelings coming into this season that might make you think twice about some players come draft day. First up, my number 1 do not draft feeling for this year, as it has been a few years going now, is Mr. Elliot Yeo of the West Coast Eagles. Yeo has been injury plagued for the past 4 seasons of AFL, only managing 37 games in his last 4 years, and the most games he managed in that time was 12 games in 1 season. Now, with all the youth coming through at West Coast and all these kids that have been drafted, his role is in jeopardy as well. So all these kids coming into the midfield, him being made of glass the last 4 years, it just doesn't fill me with a lot of hope for Elliot. He was a gun. He was an absolute gun. He's got the defender status as well, that dual position, which might tempt you a bit. And, maybe he's a decent sleeper later on, but I would not go jumping the gun on Elliot Yeo too early in your drafts this year. I just do not have faith in the man after the last 4 years of being off the field so much. Can't see myself drafting him. Just take care when you see his name. Make sure you've done a few rounds before you pull the trigger on Elliot Yeo in 2024. Secondly, here is a man that has been talked about a lot this off-season and in 2023 in Clayton Oliver with all his off-field drama towards the end of last year, it's really hard not to speculate on how his 2024 season is going to go. I don't like putting fuel on the fire. It seems like he's going through a lot off the field, but as far as fantasy goes, it's going to be hard to pick him come next year, especially in round one, where he is usually gone the last 4 or 5 years. Clayton Oliver has been a gun. He took half of last year off for some pretty vague reasonings, and didn't get back on the field till very late in the season, only to get back off the horse in all this off-field drama that's come up and being just plagued by the media, and social media is not helping too much for his mental health probably either. So I hope we can kind of all keep quiet a bit on Clayton and let him hopefully get back to form. But as of right now, I will not be drafting him in round one of my draft. Maybe round two if we can see him do some training and get in some preseason games maybe, or see something from him coming into round one would be nice at least. Let's just hope he can find some peace of mind and get back to his best for the 2024 season, because it is an absolute shame to see someone of his talent and caliber just get off the bandwagon a little bit there. And it would be great to see him come back, but just right now it's quite 50-50, and I'm not putting my eggs in the Clayton Oliver basket just yet for 2024. Next up, I have a pretty strong feeling about this one, because he was looking like he was going to be the number one ruckman at the Swans, but Peter Ladhams is probably not going to be in your draft plans for this season after Brodie Grundy came across from Collingwood at the end of last year. Brodie Grundy is an absolute jet of a ruckman, and the Swans will be utilising him 100% in the ruck come round one, and that makes Peter Ladhams, his job security has gone out the window pretty much. Unless he can start to kick the ball through the sticks as a full forward, I really don't see him getting in the centre bounces or doing anything in the midfield time, pending an awful injury to Grundy or something. But as it stands right now, Peter Ladhams' stonks are plummeting, and wouldn't be touching him with a 10-foot pole, and I'll be surprised to see him get drafted in a lot of leagues next year, unless you really waited to the last second to pick up a ruck. Probably still not worth it, to be honest. So steer clear of Peter Ladhams coming into the 2024 season. Next up, I have big man Sam Draper. I just don't have a good feeling about him coming into the season. He's been plagued by injuries the last few years. He's been pipped up to be the next big thing at the Bombers, but he has just never delivered. He's never really made a name for himself in the fantasy world, especially now with Todd Goldstein coming over from North Melbourne. The 36-year-old ruckman, the veteran of North Melbourne, should probably be taking the number one ruck mantle coming into the new season. Again, Sam Draper, he's just been on and off in his whole career so far, and he's really struggled to stay on the park and get that consistency. For a big man, they usually do take a little bit of time to get going, so I really see him taking a backseat to Todd Goldstein come the start of the 2024 season. Having said that, Todd Goldstein is not a ripe chicken himself. He's got age, unfortunately, against him there as, very old member of the team now, possibly the oldest. And so unless Todd Goldstein, goes down with an old man injury or something, or if Sam Draper can, really pick up in the preseason, I just don't see him making it into the best 22 come round one. So another midfielder here in Dion Prestia, I have serious doubts about ongoing, to be honest. I have owned Dion Prestia in past years and keeper leagues and so forth, and he has just never really delivered for me. Whether it is having season-ending injuries, niggles, hamstring problems, keeping him off the park and really dipping that average, Dion Prestia just hasn't done it for me. Give him credit, he has played 38 games in the last 2 years, but his output has dropped off quite a bit in that time. Whether it's the Tigers' game plan or just, that inconsistency to stay on the field. Dion Prestia he's been on my do not draft list for a while now, and coming into a new era at the Tigers, and at 31 years of age, I just don't see him getting better. And that sounds brutal, but it's the truth. In my books, there's so many young guns to look forward to, so many midfield options there that could potentially take that role off him in 2024. I feel as though with all these other options coming through in Jack Ross, Liam Baker getting more midfield time, Tyler Sonsie, who's the other one there? Thompson Dow, another young gun who's looking to establish himself in the midfield, really giving Dion Prestia a run for his money in his later years here. But overall, I just have doubts. I have serious doubts on Dion Prestia, and I just don't see him getting near that output he used to do. Even if he is on the field for 20 games this season, I don't see him doing what he used to do in his heyday. I really think he is becoming a bit of a relic in that Tigers squad, and probably time for a shift, and it's happening with Adam Yeasy and his management style coming through. We're going to see some changes to the Tigers this year, and whether that puts Prestia in jeopardy or not, he might have another good one in him, but personally I just don't trust his body to hold up to play that full season or to get that output as he used to get back in his heyday. Next up here, I have Mr. Dylan Shiel on my do not draft list. Once upon a time, Dylan Shiel was a decent option in AFL fantasy. In fact, last year, come round 5, he was averaging 95.6. But the wheels kind of fell off last year, and he did succumb to 2 separate injuries, one being a knee and one being a foot. So I do have doubts on his body holding up for the 2024 season, even though they're saying it shouldn't be interrupting his preseason too much, these couple of injuries. But again, I just don't believe that. I don't believe that. And not only that, but the Bombers midfield is stacked coming into the new season. Who have we got here? We've got Zach Merritt, Darcy Parish, Will Setterfield, Nick Martin, Archie Perkins, Ben Hobbs, Jai Caldwell, Xavier Dersma just came across. You've got young draftee Elijah Tsadas, I think that's how you say it, and probably Cole Langford going through there as well a little bit. So his role's in jeopardy. Not only that, but he's injured. He was injured a little bit last year, and at 31 years of age, being the oldest midfielder on the Bombers list, stacked midfield list, I just don't see him having the output that he used to do. Fingers crossed he can get on the park and play some games, but I just don't see him being the player that he used to be coming into the new year. Next up, I have another old age midfielder in Liam Shiels of North Melbourne. Another older player who is my age, but he is well and truly past his prime at AFL standard. Even in his last few years at Hawthorn, he was dipping down a little bit and not quite getting that output that he used to do. He shifted over to North Melbourne when Alistair Clarkson got the new job there, and he did get gifted forward status last year, which did perk up a few coaches' ears. But this year, Liam Shiels is a midfielder only. He is a relic in a new outfit at North Melbourne. It is just a young gun midfield coming through there, and I just don't see him playing much of a role in their season this year, other than to teach the kids how to be at AFL standard and to help them progress more so than him actually doing much on the field this year. I could see him really taking a backseat this year, and eventually by the end of 2024 he should probably be in a coaching role with Alistair Clarkson, and yeah, stay away from him. This year, he is going to be the most useless he has been in a long, long time. And finally here, I am going to be a little bit positionist in saying, please remember to stay away from key position players in 2024. Anyone that has played AFL Fantasy for a couple of years may have realised by now that key position forwards and defenders are not the most consistent AFL Fantasy scorers in the game. Yes, the big boys up the front kick the most goals, they get all the media attention, it's all about kicking as many goals as possible in AFL, I get that, but in AFL Fantasy, more often than not, the guys kicking most of the goals in a season are not the guys getting the most points for your team. Most of the time throughout a match, a key forward will be sitting at the front end of the field waiting for that inside 50 most of the game. They rarely gather more than 10 possessions in a game, and depending on their scoring accuracy, they could be hitting 100 or they could be hitting less than 40 in a match, depending how they kick and if they can kick straight between the sticks. And, you know, if they don't kick 2 or 3 goals in a match, then it's probably not going to be a good day out fantasy-wise for them. There are some exceptions to the fact, as in there's always going to be a Coleman medalist, and it's probably going to be a full forward, such as Charlie Curnow, or Jeremy Cameron last year did pretty well, Tex Walker. Those guys got above 80, but as far as full forwards or key position forwards go, those were really the best 3. Everyone else was down in the 70s, and even though we do have a bit of a shortage in forwards this year, you really can't rely on the full forwards to get you 100 every week, or even 80 every week. And when it comes to key forwards, it really comes down to the matchup that they have every week. So maybe Harry Mackay is going to kick 7, 8 goals against West Coast this week. But then against Collingwood the next week, he might not kick 1, you know? So it really is dependent on the matchup, who they're playing. Is the team just going to not let them get goals? But more than likely, the ball's going to be forward, so the key forwards will get the ball. You know, makes sense. It's not rocket science, but it is pretty annoying to have to do that every week if you've got a forward that's really relying on a decent matchup to kick the goals. You know, you want the guys that are not only kicking goals, but getting quantity, getting disposals as well, getting marks, you know, moving around the field. If you've got the full forward that's just staying in the pocket all year, then good chance that one week they could be up here, next week they're going to be right back down in the 30s or 40s, you know. So just ones to stay away from early in the draft leagues, just as a rule of thumb in fantasy. Now, key position defenders are an entirely different barrel of fish. They spend most of their time defending the key forwards, you know, the big-bodied defenders, that are just trying to spoil. That is their job, to spoil the ball. And traditionally in AFL Fantasy, unless you have the custom stats on, you don't get points for spoils. You don't get anything for them doing their job, what they are meant to be doing. It's all about quality when it's a key defender and not quantity. So in AFL Fantasy, we want quantity. We want them to be selfish. We want them to take the marks instead of punching it away, you know. So players like Ben McKay, Tom Barrass, Harris Andrews, Jacob Wiedering, those guys are fantastic at what they do, and they will be staples of their team every week. The commentators, the media will tell you how good they are, but when it comes to fantasy, they don't produce the numbers. They don't get the quantity. They're all about quality and how well they can just tap that ball away from the hands of the full forward. So unless your draft league is counting the spoils that they rack up, stay away from those big defenders. They might come in useful, as I said, if the matchup gives them a bit of leeway, but other than that, consistency-wise, quantity-wise, key position players, steer clear on draft day unless it is your last resort. So there you have it, folks. There are a few players from my do not draft list for 2024. The factual ones that are 100% not going to be there come round one, and my feelings coming into the new season, thinking who might take a dip this year, and maybe you should steer clear of those guys too. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video insightful or helpful in any way, please consider subscribing to the channel and follow me on Twitter or X at DraftMonster. We've got a lot of content coming up, and yeah, can't wait to get into this 2024 season. It's going to be a ripper. So stay tuned, and yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Cheers.